Welcome back to another episode of the UB School of Management's podcast. I'm your host, Henry Nowak, and today we'll be speaking with a very distinguished man, one of my favorite guys to hang out with, Matthew Mullens. Matt is currently an MBA student at UB, a deputy small business liaison officer at IBM, a certified professional in supplier diversity, and the founder of his own vegan cheese company, Impasta. After several rounds of pitching at the Panache Entrepreneurship Competition in spring 2024, Matt and his teammate Niharika Karati became the champions, winning first prize of $25,000 and $40,000 more in support services. Matt is also an environmental, social, and governance enthusiast and a champion of sustainability. Before his time at the UB Graduate Business School, Matt graduated from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, go Bulldogs. He published an article titled Optimizing Choices Through Interactive Data Visualization through NCANT. He was also involved as a student research assistant, a business development intern, an Opportunity Greensboro Fellow, and he sailed from California to Hawaii to study microplastics in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Matt,
thanks,
welcome
Henry.
to the show.
Glad to be on a business podcast. And it's always sometimes surreal hearing that feedback of things that you've done in the past. And you're like, wow, that's a lot. But no, I love every minute of it, and glad to be here to share kind of more about my journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've accomplished a lot, but right now you also got a lot going on. So I want to start with your balancing act. You're an MBA candidate, you're a founder of your own business, and you're working at IBM. How do you manage to balance?
That's a great question. That's the $1 million question right there. So part of me wants to say I don't balance it, right? And then some part of me wants to say there's more than one way to go about it. So for people that are listening in, the reason why I say I don't balance it is kind of almost a funny way of just saying that it's a lot. And I managed to make it happen, but one way to do that is through communication, and it's more than just me. It's because people around me have been supportive and understand the goals that I'm working towards. They kind of give flexibility, and I communicate and also still deliver, though. That's at the bottom line. You still have to deliver what people are looking for from you. But those key things of building the relationship with those that you're working with, and then communicating with those that you're working with, I found has gone a long way. And so what does that look like in the day-to-day life? You got to prioritize. Some days I'm working on school stuff. Some days I'm focused only on work stuff. Some days I'm focused only on business stuff. Some days it's a blend of school and work, or school and business, or work and business and work and school, however you mix it up. But you just got to kind of find that rhythm and stay consistent with working on your goals. Try not to get burnout, and just do what you got to do to make it happen on what you're trying to do. So could get into more specifics, but that's kind of high level of how I balance.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this communication. Definitely something that the MBA program has preached to me, preached to you. And I kind of wanted to ask you about this group that you were a part of in the MBA program this last year. How'd you manage the communication with your other 5 group members?
For those listening, the UB MBA program puts first-time MBA students in a cohort. And so I was in a cohort called Constellation Brands, where me and 5 other group members, we worked on projects together throughout the first 2 semesters of the program. So with that, as you can imagine, there's a lot of communication on homeworks, group projects, and team meetings, things of that nature. We communicated through text, through email, just in person while we're in class. But one thing that I think worked well was that our group did tell each other the external things that we had going on. Many of us did have other obligations and things of that nature through the semester. So if we're meeting for a group project, it's like, hey, I have, my work study at this time, or hey, I have this organization meeting to go to at this time, so I can't make it. And I think we did a pretty good job at picking up gaps in areas of that nature that we failed. And then there's sometimes, yeah, there was a lapse in communication. It happens. People get busy, life keeps moving on, and you may not hear anything back in the group chat when there's a question being asked about a project. And but we managed to get it done within the deadlines. And sometimes it's just a follow up nudge, or sometimes it's somebody else just picking up the workload and kind of putting the team on their back, so to speak, because it's a team effort to get it all done. So, uh, and even in my answer, I said we a couple times because Henry, you were in my we were in the same team. We didn't say that up front, but yeah, Henry, we were in the same team. So, I mean, I would even ask for a fact check of, do you feel like that was how we manage communication then, or is there anything else you would add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty fair, being able to talk through text, a lot of in-person interaction. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
seeing each other in class every single day, being able to like stay a minute after class,
Mm-hmm.
say, "Hey, can you make the meeting
Yep.
today? Are you good with this part of the assignment?" I really felt like we were always collaborating with one another and picking up certain tasks. Like I know you're very involved with being able to do some Python stuff and just knowing a lot of stuff beyond what I learned
Mm-hmm.
doing economics and philosophy. And so it was always really nice to be able to kind of run things by you and see if I was doing it the right way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but also, though, we've had a lot of very deep conversations in our group. I mean, maybe one on one
Mm-hmm.
if it's just like us playing chess
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is that day. You always seem to be able to identify the thing that people want to talk about. And you're very good at making these connections on an individual
Mm-hmm.
basis, no matter how long you know somebody. So I was curious about learning that skill, or maybe if it's
Yeah.
just come naturally for you.
Well, thanks. I'll say first for the identification of that skill. I would say it's maybe come naturally slash through development of just life. So I say naturally with a little asterisk that I don't think it was just I was born with it per se. I think it's naturally as in natural life occurrences over the course of my life so far that I've had to exercise that muscle. And that comes from, not to get too deep into personal stuff, but I moved around a lot growing up. So I've never been, let's put it this way, I, I've never lived in the same state for more than 5 years consecutively. And I'm on the latter end of my 20s. So I've always moved around, and I've always had to just learn how to socialize or fit in, or sometimes even accept the fact that I'm not fitting in that moment and be comfortable with myself. Those kind of situations have made it easy for me to talk to just about anybody. And it's helpful because when you see people, it's just people, and people have their own genuine interests. You also learn a lot from that too. So as much as I have my own passions, as you mentioned in the beginning, and I could yap about those things all day, it's always cool to hear what other people are interested in, and you get different perspectives, and sometimes you're able to share, your perspective, and it just leaves for a lot of room for inspiration because you don't know what you don't know out there until you learn it. So I think that's where it comes from.
I want to highlight something you said. You moved around so much, never spent more than 5 years in one place.
Yeah.
So why Buffalo? Right? You can choose anywhere to go, but you chose University of
Yeah,
Buffalo. I'm
so
curious as to why that
Buffalo,
is.
I've actually been here before. I have some older family members, like second cousins type deal, that live out this way. So I've traveled here as a kid, so I was familiar with it. I do like the fact, as I was looking at kind of my career path and trajectory, as you mentioned, I have a food business. So a lot of food production in the United States takes place within roughly a 500-mile radius of Western New York. So there's that aspect of it, which was a strategic kind of move on my end of saying, hey, School of Management is connected to a lot of large food suppliers. I have a food business. That's where I want to expand my network at. So Buffalo was a good candidate from that regard. The other piece is I've lived in both smaller cities and larger cities. And there's something about, I've heard it before. I don't know where it comes from, but I'm sure you may have heard it too. But there's a difference between being a big fish in a small pond versus, being in a big pond and a small fish. So that people, there's pros and cons to both, right? And I see Buffalo as kind of that smaller pond that I like being I don't like to say the big fish because it's not about that. It's more so about the impact that you're able to have. So when you live in smaller areas, I feel like you're able to create that impact, uh, I guess, more quickly because you're able to get integrated into the community. So that's why I like Buffalo. Just the sense of the community, the industries that are around here, and of course UB's reputation for entrepreneurship was a good draw in to bring me here for a couple years.
I love that you said big fish and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to take that on because
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
you, man. I know you as a very humble guy. And, at this point,
Mhm,
I feel like you can just say it. Like, you found your success, and specifically with Impasta. And I know I've heard this story from you, right? Like the start of Impasta
mhm.
and exactly how it went there. But what do you want the listeners
It
to know
wasn't
about that
overnight.
story?
Nowadays I hear people talk about Panache and oh, you won this and that and whatnot. And yes, I'm grateful. I'm happy that it happened, but it wasn't a overnight process. To come in and win Panache as a first year MBA student, some people saw that as significant and impressive. And it's like, yeah, it's my first year as an MBA student, but I've been working on this for long before I even thought about an MBA. Before I even finished undergrad, I was, tinkering away. So lots of mistakes were made along the way, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of what people would call failures. I don't consider those failures. It's just opportunities to learn how to improve and things of that nature. So, long story short for the listeners is that really it's a passion business fueled by the effort to create something that's sustainable and good in the world, and good in the most objective way I guess I could think of it. And yeah, just continuing every day to add value to the people that engage with the product.
I'll be the first to say it tastes good. It tastes good
Yeah,
as
thank you.
with everything I've had it with. I remember you coming over
Mm-hmm.
and pitching it with my family and having
Mm-hmm.
like, all the vegetables and
Mm-hmm.
some crackers, some popcorn with it, some pretzels. I mean, it's honestly it's better than the other
Yeah, well,
cheese we
thank you.
had in the
Yeah.
house. I'm
Appreciate
not vegan, but I'll say that. I'll say that it's really something that I've enjoyed, and I've seen so much enjoyment
it.
of it with all my peers this last year. So, seriously, good work on that
Mm.
end. I know
Thank
it
you,
was a
thank you.
long process. Um, so I know that you talked about sort of like the failures and maybe certain lessons that you've learned along the way. What was the main lesson you think, or maybe a recent
Yeah.
lesson that you want to highlight?
Use the resources that are around. Like that's people get caught up in their own bubbles and feel like they got to make it happen themselves. And I was I guess a victim of that, or I did that as well at some point. But utilizing the resources, like if you're in Buffalo, UB has a ton of resources for students that um, some people leverage and some people don't. So for the people that are out there working on something, I always just remind them there's more to be leveraged. Even if you are using some programs or some resources, there's probably something else out there that you could look into and utilize in order to grow your idea, or whatever you've already may have started that's past an idea. Uh, so that's kind of the biggest takeaway is just knowing how to ask for help, when to look for help, and how to utilize what's out there because it's for you. It's out there for you.
Hmm. I wanted to talk about your
Mm-hmm.
kind of enthusiasm, I guess, as you say, about
Mm-hmm.
environmental and social governance, and maybe you've tied that
Yeah.
into your life and your
Good
business.
question. So this one, we could have did the whole podcast about this. I could have talked the whole podcast about this one, but no, like it's
Yeah.
been a thing I would say literally since my before my freshman year of undergrad, like coming straight out of high school. I did a summer program, and basically it was a technology summer program, and uh, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but the professor at the time was just like, "Hey, want you to work on this solar panel project for this overall project we're working on," and that was just one component of it. And that was my first exposure to the concept of environmental sustainability, and I fell in love with it. So ever since then, I've grown my knowledge around the subject matter, and I've tried to do it all of my career. From supplier diversity is what I've been doing at a large enterprise for a little over 2 years now, and that goes into creating equitable opportunities for diverse suppliers or diverse entrepreneurs in that sense. And pasta came out of that, which is a vegan plant-based cheese sauce. Once I learned how dietary choices impact the environmental impact around you, and so we produced the plant-based cheese utilizing potatoes and carrots as the base to create something that's delicious and lower impact than traditional dairy cheeses. Even now, I do some work at UB Sustainability Office, things of that nature, working on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Last semester, I did a project with Lexington Co-op to come up with their climate action plan, and so I try to embody it in most of the work I do, if not all the work I do. But all is a strong statement. I'm sure if I reflect somewhere, there's something I did that wasn't sustainable, but 90% of the stuff I do, I try to do consciously and relate it to some sort of ESG pillar, which is environmental, social, or governance pillar, and that keeps me fulfilled. That keeps me motivated, and it's always good when you can use business as a force for good.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned kind of how you've tied in so many different opportunities to this common passion that you've had ever since high school. How did you really identify that passion? I know you said
Mm.
you were working with solar panels in high school, um, but was there a specific moment? Was there a time where you were like, "Oh, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
really
know if it
gonna go
was
for
a
this."
specific moment, but just it was a specific realization. I don't know what triggered the realization, but I
Yeah.
remember working on the solar panel project and like thinking like, wow, we get energy, we can convert energy from the sun like for free. The sun is always there. Like we can utilize this. At the time, mind blown as a young adult, and and that triggered really just when I start thinking about, okay, well, we're all on this planet, we're all here to contribute in some way, and I think the driving force was I wanted my legacy to be positive, as most people do. Positive can be so many things, right? There's so many issues, so many, like, I guess what do you want to, like, causes that people can go and work towards. And so for me, sustainability seemed to be one of the most common denominators to a lot of other problems, because it boils down to some sort of inequity gap, or I should say equity gap, or some sort of environmental issue, or something of that nature, or food issue. All these things boil down to sustainability. Lack of resources for some people cause them to make bad decisions. Again, goes into sustainability. And so when I had that realization that was kind of like the underlying common denominator, and like all the other problems don't matter if we don't have a planet to exist on. Like if everybody dies because they starve to death, or like because we can't produce food, or we all get dehydrated because there's no clean water out there, we can't breathe because there's no clean air, like then all the other problems either are going to get amplified or they just don't matter because there's nobody there to have those problems. And so, yeah, that kind of though that tie-in made me passionate about this area and made me feel like, okay, this is a broad enough area too where I can't get bored doing one thing, and I can work on it for a lifelong career.
Totally makes sense. And I know you mentioned your role at IBM briefly there. I can't believe you've it's been 3 years and you've had three roles. You had two promotions already. And so I wanted to talk to you about um, getting that initial role at IBM and kind of seeing your progress to this point. I know at some points you've mentioned that you're doing more work than your
Yeah.
job title says,
Yep.
right? Than your job title indicates. And so I just
Yeah.
wanted a little bit of
No,
explanation
that
on that.
so I came into IBM right after undergrad. As a procurement consultant. It's basically a hiring program that they had for recent grads or people that were in their senior year of undergrad. So kind of came in that program. Was uh, working with one of their external clients, helping improve their procurement operations. So I learned a lot about procurement at that time. Uh, Still always had this passion around sustainability. So I started looking into, well, how does sustainability and procurement tie in together? And I was sharing that with my manager, and they were like, "Okay, we hear you, we understand. Teach us." And they said, "Teach us, how to be more sustainable." So I said, "Okay," and didn't know what I was doing at the time, but did a lot of learning about procurement and sustainability and what was already out there and best practices. And I did a whole pitch in front of the procurement organization at that time, and it went well. People had questions. It was engaging. So from there, my manager was like, "Hey, well, we have this opportunity for a supplier diversity manager. Would you be interested in that?" Again, didn't really know about supplier diversity like that, but I looked into it and I said, "Wow, this actually aligns with sustainability, procurement, and using business as a force for good, where we're helping diverse entrepreneurs do business with large enterprises." And so I interviewed for that role. The manager liked my energy, enthusiasm, and knowledge around the subject, and I came in and I was managing IBM's North America's supplier diversity program for a little while, and then uh, did some great work there. Started up a mentor protege program, IBM's first commercial mentor protege program, which was fulfilling and kind of let me exercise my entrepreneur kind of skills. We call it being an intrapreneur, where you do something internally at an organization that's entrepreneurial like. Uh, so went ahead and
Sure.
worked with the team to do that, and then from there they asked me to come into a federal space where I'm working on that side of the business aspect with the federal government and things of that nature, and that's where I'm at now. So it's been a fun journey, but I've always tried to keep sustainability at the forefront, and I've been very vocal about that internally. So that way, my peers and leadership both kind of know where I'm trying to do, and I don't just talk about it. I'll come in and, given the opportunity, do what I can to implement it, and people see that and they enjoy it, and I think it's going okay right now.
I gotta say, I've seen you as a mentor for many people and giving advice. Been a mentor for me for sure. I was curious in the MBA program if you've seen yourself as a mentor or grow mentor skills, or maybe if you've had a mentor in this program
Yeah.
that you'd like to shout out.
I guess a little bit of everything. I've seen myself be a mentor just because of kind of the stage of life. Like when you're in the MBA class, there's people that are have had a full career and people that haven't had their first like career job yet, and everything in between. So I think by default, almost everybody becomes a mentor at some point throughout the program if you're talking with the rest of the cohort, because you're going to run into somebody that's maybe aiming to get where you're trying to get, or maybe even ahead of where you're trying to get. And it's always good to share perspectives there. In terms of finding a mentor here, yes, there's been some great mentors that UB has connected me with, especially during Panache. Being connected with Pete, being connected with Mercedes. These are all food entrepreneurs that have left their mark and continue to grow their businesses, and people that just are good people, and they're out here doing great work as well. So uh, I would say those are some of the mentors that I've been introduced since being here in Buffalo. Of course, I've had mentors along the way, even before coming to Buffalo. So, um, it's you find a mentor for kind of the stage of life you're in and what you're trying to do. And so as you grow, sometimes you outgrow mentors, or sometimes mentors become friends. Like I've my like first mentor that I would like self-identify as a mentor. We're good friends now. Like he's already kind of let me know, hey, you're past being mentored. We're just like buddies, and it's a great relationship. But yeah, I would say it's a mixture. To your initial question, it's a mixture of been a mentor to some people in the class, but no, Buffalo is really good. UB is really good at pairing you with someone uh, as you grow throughout your career journey.
Would you say that's the most rewarding part of your program, or is there another part that you say, you know what, that's actually what I think
Yeah,
is the
I would
best part so
say
far?
community impact has been the best part. Mentorship's cool, and again, as we mentioned earlier in this conversation, just like having conversations with people can lead to inspiration, and talking with people, that's great and fun. But in terms of like, if I had to say the best part, is being able to say, hey, I have an idea that can help people. How can I work on it? And you be kind of wrapping around to say, okay, this is what you want to do. Here's a practical way to achieve it. And then being able to talk with people out in the community that have done it themselves or are currently doing it. Um, that to me, that's the I guess most rewarding part of the program.
That's a fantastic answer. What about the most challenging part so far?
Yeah,
I'm a very accomplished man, but surely there's been things
yeah.
that have come in your way where
Oh
you're like,
yeah,
oh, you know
yeah.
what,
I'll,
I
I'll
need a
I'll
little bit
say
of
this:
help with this.
nothing's easy. I don't care how accomplished the person you're talking to is. Whatever they did, it probably wasn't easy. And that obviously applies to me too. So um, I guess what we opened up the call with, work-life balance. That's been the toughest part of just saying,
Yeah.
hey, I want to do all these things. I want to be involved in all these aspects and contribute to all these different projects and stuff I know that's going on, but it's just one me, and that's been the challenging part of just saying, hey, you gotta know your limitations or know when to draw back and when to apply yourself, and it's a balance of doing that. But another good lesson I've learned, and this goes to another question you asked, but another good lesson I've learned now that I'm thinking about it out loud, building a team.
Yeah.
That has been something I've, I've learned and have found very valuable since here. Knowing how to go out and build a team, being comfortable with building a team, and then not only building it, but also being comfortable with leading it, and then empowering others to lead the things that they want to lead within the team. So these are kind of lesson learned slash rewarding things I've gotten, but the struggle has been just balancing, trying to balance everything.
Matt, you're making my job easy.
Yeah,
How do you build a good team?
no
What's the
secret.
secret?
Trial and error. Or I would say I'm not far enough to have done it enough to be like, oh, here's this foolproof formula to build a team. But right now, I would say I have a solid team around me, and it was because of uh, just putting yourself out there. I ask people to say, hey, I'm working on this. Would appreciate. I think your skill sets or interests would be a value add. Do you want to collaborate? And I've had people say no, like they just say, hey, not interested, and like that's okay, that's totally fair. And I've had people say
Hmm.
yes, and it may not be a good fit, and then I've had people say yes, and it was a good fit. So uh, just being comfortable to put yourself out there, just kind of say what you need help with or what you want help with. But
Hmm.
the I guess if there was like a secret, it's more so about finding what that other person likes and empowering them to do that within the team. And maybe that's one of those skill sets you mentioned earlier of like when I'm talking to people, you said, it seems I'm easy at talking about what they enjoy talking about and things like that. And maybe that goes into the team building, but
Yeah.
that's been what I've found to be that's worked. That's what has worked so far.
Gotcha. So what about your long-term career goals? You got so much going on. What do you think is
Well,
the
there's a
future look
saying
like for you?
I go by that I like that man makes plans, God laughs. So I don't want to get too much into the future. Of course, I'm goal oriented, but I can tell you something right now, and 3 weeks from now, it could be a totally different answer based on how things play out. But high level, definitely want to be doing something positive in the sense of environmental sustainability, whether that's community based, technical based, or in a larger organization. Uh, Keeping Impasta growing and thriving is in the game plans, and um, yeah, those are kind of the two main things career wise for foreseeable future. But we'll see. That's the real answer. We'll see.
Any advice you have for future grad
Hey,
students?
when you come here to do your thing. Yeah, when you come
All
here to
right.
do your thing.
Okay.
Don't be shy. Don't let the moment pass. Um, you applied for a reason. You were accepted for a reason. Um, Own that. Be confident in that. Don't be afraid to fail as you come in and explore your journey, and don't be afraid to share what you're trying to accomplish and get out of it, because you never know who is working on something similar or wants to support that or knows somebody that can help. And um, so that's like the details behind my initial statement of when you come here, don't be afraid to do your thing.
Very nice. Anything that you want to shout out? If there's people listening that know you or know of you, any personal interests, you're like, hey, hit me up.
Oh
Let's
man.
ask me to do this with you.
Nah, I don't want to name drop, but people people that are out there, you're listening to this and you've interacted with me. I'm an open book, so reach out. It'd be great to reconnect and catch up about anything. Always, reach out. Let me know how I can help, and yeah, hope whoever's listening, we can stay connected, especially if you already know me. And if you don't know me and I said something of interest and you want to, chat it up and talk about something, just reach out. We can find 30 minutes, hop on a Zoom and talk about whatever. So yeah, that's my shout out.
All
Yeah.
right, Matt.
So
Where can they find you?
find me, at impastafood.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Matthew Mullens. Those are the kind of two main places where you'll probably be able to reach me quickest. So uh, either one of those.
Any shout out for where to
Online,
find Impasta?
impastafood.com. It'll come right to your doorstep.
All right, sounds good. Matt, thank you very much for your time. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on the podcast. Make sure to follow the UB School of Management on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe, like, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great rest of your day. Go UB
Go Bulls.
Bulls, and we'll see you again soon.